Hey everyone, this is Yuri Rashkin, and this is a video lecture Methods of Persuasion. We're going to go over 3 methods of persuasion in this one. First of all, we're going to talk about logos, then legos, and pathos. Legos, wait a minute, that's a puzzle. Logos, pathos, and ethos. And if you have encountered those words in the past, possibly in high school, you know that ethos is about establishing your authority to speak on a subject, logos is your logical argument for your point, and pathos is your attempt to sway an audience emotionally. Let's take this apart and do it in English, shall we? First, we want to talk about enhancing our credibility and our credibility in general. We want people to pay attention to us. In order for this to happen, they need to view us as credible. First of all, we need to explain our competence. Now, a lot of people struggle with this because they're not sure that they want to talk about themselves. And I don't want to be like, hey, and I won this, and I won this, and I got this trophy, and I've accomplished this. But honestly, who would listen to us if they didn't know that we did accomplish those things? So with some kind of credibility, we need to explain why we're competent to speak. Then we need to establish common ground with our audience. It's another way to enhance our credibility is to talk to our audience about something that we have in common. Hey guys, it's a nice day outside today. Some common ground. You can also use the classic sales approach where whenever you walk into a sales office and you see that the person that you need to be selling something to has Green Bay Packers stuff on their wall, well, you should talk about how the Packers are doing. So if you're going to be talking about if you're speaking to students at UW Parkside, you for sure want to talk about perhaps COVID and mention that because it is a challenge that everybody is dealing with and we're all in the same COVID boat. So mentioning, hey, how you guys, got some nice masks out there is at least something that can connect people. But then we can also talk about Then we can also deliver our speeches fluently, expressively, and with conviction, which is something that I speak about all the time when evaluating your speeches, and that is, are you passionate? Do you care about the topic? If you care about the topic, then people are going to be pulled in to pay attention. And this is where you want to make sure to show your passion by speaking fluently, expressively, and with conviction. Next, as we are building credibility, we need to understand that credibility actually consists of 2 factors. One is competence and one is character. So you can have somebody who is a really nice person but a terrible doctor, let's say, and so they're not really credible. Or you can have somebody who is a really good doctor but just a terrible person, and you go, they're not very credible. So to be fully credible, we need people to respect both our competence and our character. Types of credibility. We have initial credibility, derived, and terminal. Now, none of this is lethal, but initial is in the beginning, derived is in the middle, and terminal is in the end. So if I come into the classroom and I say, hey guys, I'm going to show you how to do that fancy Russian dancing when I put my hands up here and I squat and I jump up and my legs go in different directions. It's awesome. You guys are going to love it. And you're like, well, he's from Russia, so chances are he knows. So he looks credible. Okay. Then I start showing things to you and you're like, is he crazy? He has no idea how to do this dance. It's just awful. And all of a sudden my derived credibility is shut. And then finally, as I'm done and you look at the terminal credibility, you go, well, he's pretty good at talking about it, but he's not really good teaching it because he really doesn't know how to do it. Okay, and my terminal credibility is not really good because I just didn't know the topic. Or you can have somebody who comes in and they're initially not very credible, but then they start speaking and you go, wow, this person has accomplished all these things, and she looks, and he, I don't know, looks like a homeless person, and we're like, well, I shouldn't trust him, but then now I hear all the things he has to say and I go, wow, I really should trust him because his credibility is shot up during the speech. And then at the end, terminal credibility, we go, yeah, this person is pretty credible to speak on this topic. Okay, so it can go either direction. Now that we have very briefly, but directly address the idea of our personal credibility. Now we have logic, we have evidence, we have numbers. How do we use it? Well, we have specific evidence. That means we point finger at a specific case study or a source or something very specific that we can point and say, in this particular study, 85% of people, like very specific. Or you could use novel evidence where it hasn't been used before, like for instance, the Secretary of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, was just quoted as saying that 50% of people who are asking for asylum are not showing up for their court hearings, which he considered to be a good thing. And no one's ever used that approach to measure success or failure of immigration policies, whether people show up. And in fact, before Chad Wolf's involvement, people showed up 99% of the time. So in a way, you can say that it's really not working. But his way to prove that Trump immigration policies are successful is by pointing at this novel evidence that no one ever thought of using before, with mixed results. Use evidence from credible sources. This is very important because you need to understand you are not looking to use sources that are credible to you. You are looking to use sources that are credible to your target audience because that's who you're looking to persuade. If I'm arguing with somebody who is conservative, and as my source I use CNN or New York Times or Washington Post, this person might say, well, they're not credible to me. And you can't argue with it because this person has a different set of places where they're getting their information. Their values are at this point are slightly different. And what you consider to be credible, they do not. So if you're looking to persuade somebody who is conservative, you need to address them using citations from Fox News or another publication or media outlet that this person would consider credible, and use that to build your case. On the other hand, if you're speaking to somebody who's politically liberal and you say, well, Fox News said, this person is going to dismiss you right out of hand because they don't consider Fox News to be credible. Therefore, knowing your audience is very important because it helps us find the right sources that are going to be more credible with that particular audience. And you always want to make sure to make clear the point of your evidence. Why are you using this number? Why are you using this evidence at all? Sometimes people get lost, sometimes people move too fast with the speech and they don't explain why this particular source, why this particular evidence. Please make sure to explain it to us, because the same way that we may not be able to see that you're nervous simply because it's on the inside of your head and we can't go there, in this case you may have perfect evidence but you never explain it to us, you never verbalize it, and we don't see the connection. So please make sure to address that in your speech as well. As we're continuing with our logical thinking and how we can persuade reasonable people using data, we need to think about reasoning. Reasoning can come from specific instances where we can point at a specific situation and say, look what happened over there. And this is if we're arguing questions of fact. However, if we're arguing questions of value, then reasoning from principle would be more appropriate, because if it is wrong to drown kittens and it is wrong to kill people or wrong to kill things, whatever our principle in this particular case is, then we can reason from that principle. Since we have decided that is the wrong thing to do, then, and we go from there. Causal reasoning is when we show that one thing was caused by another. This is a very useful way to reason in a cause problem solution kind of a speech, because you need to explain how one thing causes the other. The second point in a problem cause solution speech is the cause or effect. So you have to explain to us how the planet warming up, how this was caused by human action, or what kind of effect this will have, the cause. And finally, analogical reasoning. Analogical reasoning is wonderful because we actually use analogies and metaphors all the time. We compare things to other things all the time because it helps. It makes things easier. You can do the same thing here where you can compare. Just got to make sure that you're using the right analogy, not a false analogy, and that you are truly comparing apples to apples. Ooh, fallacies. These are so much fun because if you know fallacies, that means that when you listen to another speaker, you can, in your mind at least, if you can't verbally say it to their face, you can say, oh, that's a fallacy. I've been warned about this in lecture by Professor Rashkin. So for instance, So let's take a look at these and see if they may sound familiar to you in your life situation. First of all, hasty generalization. That would be when someone, and I'm going to use exclusive pronouns here because I don't want to say when we, because that's really not the point. The point is that it's them. Now we want to use other exclusive pronouns and point at people over there and say that they're the ones who are causing these problems, not us. When we say no, when they say. Fallacies and logical fallacies is something that's been described as a cheat code in a video game, in a sense that you can win the game, but you're not doing it in a legitimate way by showing your facts, your figures. You're doing it by cheating. So let's take a look at some of the most popular logical fallacies. Number one, hasty generalization. If I'm going to look at this classroom and say, wow, I have 20 students in this classroom, that means that every classroom at university is 20 students. That would be wrong, because that would be a hasty generalization. I don't really know. I haven't looked at the numbers. I just looked at what I saw in front of me and generalized from there. That would be a hasty generalization. False cause is when we point at something and we say that's really not the cause. This is just fake, the real cause, but it's actually not real, it's false. So make sure that, because we have this tendency as humans, when we see two things occurring right next to each other, time-wise, we presume that one of them caused the other. That is not necessarily the case at all. Just because two things happened chronologically next to each other doesn't mean that one of them caused the other. Like if you were out and you had a great game of golf and it was sunny day, is it that you had a great game of golf because it was sunny day, or those things just occurred and that's really a false cause? Invalid analogy. That would be very simply comparing apples to oranges. Some things are comparable, some things are less comparable, and definitely they need explanation. If you're not able to reasonably explain how things are similar, you leave us with a possibility that maybe things are not similar at all, and you are comparing apples and oranges, things that don't make any sense. And you know what? This is important to understand. We have to respect fallacies and not just dismiss them by saying, wait a minute, that's a logical fallacy. You just disqualified yourself. Which, while it may be kind of true that if people are cheating, they're not really persuading, and I guess that's the punishment of themselves in and of itself, is that if you haven't persuaded me because I caught on to the fact that you're using logical fallacies, well, I guess, I don't know, maybe you just wasted time, maybe you should have done some research, maybe you shouldn't be using logical fallacies. And that brings us to probably the most popular logical fallacy, which is bandwagon. That means that you don't want to be left out. Everybody is doing it. Where do we see this most often? In sports. Because what team has the most fans? Whatever team just won the major championship in its sport, that's the team that has the most fans, because they're bandwagon fans. But of course, bandwagon doesn't just exist in sports. It exists all over our lives, because, oh, look, everybody's going to this place, I should go too. Oh, everybody's not doing this, everybody's doing this. And we are social animals. We don't want to be left out. So we end up being persuaded to do things just because everybody else is doing them. Although, of course, if all your friends jumped off the bridge, would you jump as well? Red herring is a fallacy argument that distracts from the original topic. Some may refer to this type of argument as a smokescreen. Red herrings are frequently used in mysteries, thrillers, and dramatic novels, but they're also used in political speeches, because sometimes a candidate doesn't really want to talk about a particular issue. It's not a winning issue, so she or he will just shift it into a different direction, as in case with Donald Trump. So such a giving person for logical fallacy examples. When he says, when was the last time we won in anything against Mexico? And you go like, what? Why is this a game? Why are we talking about winning against Mexico? I didn't know we were at war with. What's going on? But that's really a shift away from the topic to a different topic, and that would be red herring. Next, ad hominem. Very popular technique for arguing in politics, because it is easy. I don't have to I don't have to take on your argument if I can just say, you're bold, you're fat, you're one-legged, you're an idiot. Because at that point, you're not arguing with me on my merits. You're saying, oh, I'm not an idiot. I'm not bald. Look, I still have hair. Here. No, and we're no longer speaking about the argument. So ad hominem is very good at distracting, both because we can distract others and we can be distracted. So pay attention. But when we insult other person, that really doesn't do anything about addressing their point, even though the emotions are raised and people feel very passionate. Either or is a wonderful fallacy that highlights the fact that sometimes we just want to say, well, either you can stay here and eat all and do all the dishes and do all the laundry, or you can go there and have all the pizza and have all the fun. Chances are the truth is somewhere in between, and if you're being offered a choice that is so stark that either everything's fine or everything's horrible, that is frequently referred to as either or fallacy. Another one is slippery slope, where we just say that, well, if this little thing happens, then that's going to lead to other things, and pretty soon things will get out of control. Appeal to tradition. Wonderful, wonderful fallacy, because it reaches to us on a very emotional and personal level. Tradition. This is how our family has always done it. This is how our county board has always done it. This is how it's always been done. Anybody ever seen Fiddler on the Roof? Great song. Tradition, tradition. Turns out it's a fallacy, and that's not a good reason to do anything. If there's a logical reason, sure. If there's a principle that we're following, sure. But simply because we've done it before, not a good reason. That's a fallacy. On the other hand, appealing to saying that something is the right thing to do because it is the new thing to do because we haven't done it, which is the opposite of tradition approach, is also not very good because it simplifies. It's too simplistic. We don't know if the new solution is any good. We just know we haven't tried it before. Who wants to try this candy that no one tried ever yet, therefore it must be great? Let's think about this. So those are some of the fallacies, and they offer a lot of room for thought. Are you using logical fallacies when you're speaking to others? Stop it. Are you letting other people use logical fallacies on you? Stop it. Next, very important opportunity to connect with people on emotional level, because now we have moved into pathos. Pathos, which is really emotions. We want to connect with people on an emotional level. That means that data doesn't matter. That doesn't matter that even our credibility matters anymore, because when we connect with people on emotional level, and it's very important to understand, their logical thinking, our logical thinking shuts down, because emotions operate almost on chemical level, and that will overpower our logical thinking really fast. If I'm going to tell you that your family is in jeopardy, the price of gas hardly matters, because family jeopardy, right? And that takes us to the first emotional appeal, which is fear. Scaring people has been the operating currency of politics for many, many years, because it turns out that there's no emotional appeal stronger than fear. In 2016, polls showed that Hillary Clinton was winning, yet Trump supporters and Trump Republicans were a lot more scared. So they were scared, and so they went and voted in greater numbers in the right states to give Donald Trump the victory in 2016. Fear, very powerful emotion. Next, on the other hand, is compassion, which is a positive emotion. It makes us feel good. I want you to feel, if I want to raise a level of compassion in you, I will show you pictures. I will tell you stories. I will show you pictures of kittens and puppies and babies. Next, pride. Pride is one of those wonderful feelings that we can increase in others and in ourselves, and we can even have it associated with us if we just use the word pride. I was helping somebody run for city council in Janesville, and the person who was preparing for the debates, and he was like, well, what if they ask me this question that I don't have an answer for? What about this? What about that? I said, if you just don't know the answer, then talk about how proud you are to live here, how proud you are of the city organization, organization, that, it's a good positive thing, which he did. He really took that to heart, and I couldn't believe how many times he used the word proud during the debate. Not only did he win the election, and he got the most votes of any candidate ever running for city council in Janesville, but also I just remember an elderly couple that was leaving the debate, and they looked at each other and said, boy, that young man, he is really proud. So if you say that you're proud of something, then you will make others feel proud, and you will be associated with the word proud, which is a good word to be associated with. Next is guilt. And guilt is a very powerful word. I mean, where would world's religions be if we didn't have guilt? I mean, look, Jesus Christ died for your sins. And immediately we feel a slight sense of guilt, and then, that's the right time to send that platter around, because, boy, you just might want to put in there something because you feel guilty. The power of guilt has been used by religion and churches for millenniums, and it's very, very powerful. So don't ignore it. Don't think that this is below you. If you're speaking about something, you need to appeal to people on an emotional level, and if you're speaking about principle, well, I don't know. Do you feel guilty? Would you feel guilty if you didn't do something, and then the planet became, the climate got worse, and you didn't do your part, and nobody did their part? Don't you feel guilty? Right? So guilt can be a very powerful motivator. And finally, reverence. And reverence basically is just having a very deep sense of respect for someone or something. We use it in our speeches all the time when we use quotes, because using a quote is asking for appealing to reverence. Well, you may not agree with me, but Nelson Mandela said blah, 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 blah. And we're like, well, Nelson Mandela, I respect, I revere Nelson Mandela. Therefore, your argument has just been made more persuasive because you appeal to reverence. Okay? So reverence is something that you can use to make your case, because maybe you are just a little, not such an important person in this field, but people who are far more important and very respected and revered in the field agree with you, and so shouldn't the audience. How do we generate emotional appeals? Well, we use emotional language, and really what that means is using a lot of adjectives. Or if you think about it, when you go on Facebook and it asks you how you're feeling, or you want to put in the emoji for how you're feeling, that's all emotional language. Whether you're feeling confused, whether you're feeling happy, whether you're feeling sad, whether you're feeling inspired, all of that is emotional language. And in fact, I even found a little chart that gives us some helpful suggestions on what are some feeling words. If you want to bring up anger or happiness or sadness or confusion or being energized or being strong, there's words for that. And I invite you to use those words in your presentations, because they're going to make it stronger. It's going to increase the emotional appeal of your pitch, which is what you want. If you're going to be giving a persuasive speech, you want to persuade people. So incorporate some of the emotional language into your presentation. Continuing, next we can generate emotional appeal by developing vivid examples, which is basically just stories. Think about stories, think about the effect that they're going to have. Are they going to have the right effect, or are they going to have the wrong effect? Sometimes we have experience telling stories. They're good stories, but they're not for their every time. So think if your story fits into this particular situation, and does it promote the point that you're looking to make overall. If it does, vivid examples of stories of what happened, case studies, documenting, is very useful in generating emotional appeal. And always speak with sincerity and conviction. This is why I always ask students to find topics that they care about, because it is really hard to speak about something you really don't care about. So find things in life and in public speaking that you care about, do some research, and speak with sincerity and conviction. And that's about it for the speech. That's about it for the presentation on how we can persuade others. There hasn't been much new information invented since the ancient Greeks, but it is still information that is very important, very relevant to each one of us, because as we continue to engage with people in conversations, as we continue to look to persuade others to do our bidding and to take action, it is very important to use emotions, to use data and facts, and to be credible.